Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 4th of June 2025, coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0DC.
Hello.
And me, David G7RP. Great to have you with us. On tonight's show, we find out how Kevin AA3XV turned a teenage hobby into an out-of-this-world career. We've got the final details about Radioactive. This weekend is our annual mini Hamfest on our doorstep. It's your last chance to book tonight. And we find out what on earth this is. If you haven't already entered, we've had a few entries, but if you haven't already entered and you know what that is or know what it's part of, then drop it onto BATC or Facebook and we'll let you know if you're right when we get to that part of the evening. But first, our highlight really does have to be a Radioactive, which, as I said, is this sort of annual party we do at our place here, within metres of where we're sitting right now. And it's all this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Some of the setting up of the 6-metre station is going to be on Friday night, but apart from that, and they're okay, I think, for that. But apart from that, everything will be done on the Saturday and Sunday. So let's have a little look at what's there. We've got a slide for you here with just some of the ideas of what's happening. Well, we have already put together a guide, and if you're a subscriber to the Norfolk Amateur Radio Club newsletter, then you should have had a copy of that. In fact, you'd have had 2 over the last week. We sent out over 300 of those emails twice, so you should have it. If you haven't, by the way, please email me and I'll send it tonight straight after this show. So if you haven't already had a booking form and all the specific details and the timetable and everything of when these things are happening. But so there we are, you can see on there. Firstly, this is around National Field Day. This is why we've been doing this now. This will be the 16th, I think. Is it, Tammy? Yeah, I think so. The 16th one we've ever done. So 16 years we've been doing it. We had to miss a few because of COVID. But there's a CW station, which is the main National Field Day, traditional part of the contest stations. But there's also an SSB Field Day station operating in a field just across the road from here. So they're all within just very near here, and there's plenty of parking and stuff here, by the way. You can make your own antenna. We're going to have a really nice project which Nick M0HGU has put together, where you can make your own active antenna. And I really do mean make your own, because this is a very rare thing nowadays, but you get to etch your own circuit board. So you're going to learn from the very basics of how to build something yourself. We have only got about 2 spaces left. If you haven't already booked a space, I think we've got 8 people already, and the absolute maximum we can take is 10. So please, again, you need to book tonight. And if you're not one of the first 2 that come in tonight, I'm afraid, you may have to go onto a waiting list in case someone can't come. That's really, really important. We've got construction help and advice all weekend. We've got a nice little production room that we turn into a little workshop. So if you want some help on making something, we haven't probably got the resources to stay with you lots of time. But if you want to make a kit and you just don't know where to start, Tammy or me or one of the other guys who are really into construction will help you. Now, something that we did a 3D printer demonstration and a laser cutter demonstration earlier in the year at CNS school. But what we didn't do is explain how to design things. So it's all very well finding stuff on the web and saying press print and it does it. But what about if you want to design something yourself? So Tammy here and also Martin, G7UGB, is going to be showing you how to make a design. There's also other talks on radials and counterpoises, for example. We've got Jim Bacon giving us a weather forecast. We've got Steve G0KY giving us a propagation forecast, and lots of other things as well. Plus, on this booking form, there's a chance to buy some useful tools and test equipment and things that a lot of them are at special prices. If you want those, though, for the weekend, you can imagine this is Wednesday night. I just have to have these forms back tonight. I said 9 o'clock. I guess we could stretch it till 11 o'clock. I won't be doing much tonight, but first thing tomorrow I'll be sitting at my desk and making those orders. So if you'd like to be part of this weekend, even if you just want the free Sunday lunch, by the way, which Tammy and I cook, that's absolutely free. You don't have to do anything except drop me an email. You don't even need to copy the form, but you do need to let us know, because we just got to have a vague idea how much we're cooking and who we're cooking for. Now, I'm sure it hasn't escaped you unless you haven't seen any weather forecasts the last few days, that we're not in for the best of weather this weekend. Jim G through YLA has done us already a specific weather forecast, and it doesn't look great, let's be honest. but it's all about the camaraderie as well. And of course, we've got all of the things here at DCP are all inside. So you really don't need to worry about getting wet for that. And please do support the guys who are going to be setting up tents and who are going to be running a contest for 24 hours. You know, they do need your support as well.
Bring your wellies.
Bring your wellies.
And your
It's
cagoule.
good idea. Yeah, and actually, this is a serious point. We do want to try and preserve this place for another year. So if it is really looking wet, if you do bring your wellies, please bring a change of shoes. We'll make an area in the reception where you can sort of stand everything safely and things. But we really want you to come. Don't let the weather put you off. But yeah, if you're going to walk over to either the stations behind or in front of DCP, and you're going to get your feet wet maybe in some of the grass and things, so maybe bring a change of footwear. I think that's almost it, except to also mention the radioactive RAF. Oh no, I'm going to... actually, there is something else I want to show you now. We've got another slide here. Now, one of our members, Tony, 2E0BDB, he actually died a couple of years ago, but his son lives and works in America, and so he hasn't got around to sort of clearing his equipment. Well, I went round there with Tammy a couple of Fridays ago, and we collected lots of stuff. Now, just to give you an idea, these are the books that I took. Books are not always the most popular things now, but there's some really wonderful books here. They're all in as new condition. Seriously, you wouldn't know that they haven't come out of a bookshop.
No.
There's nothing used about them, and we're really not looking for much money at all for them. In fact, I'll go so far as to say, I'd like you to put £1 or £2 into the charity box for this. Tony's wife is very happy for that. But if you don't want to pay anything for them, I'd rather that than they go into recycling, because that's where they'll have to go if we don't clear them. So I picked the most sort of usable and popular books. There they are, and you'll have a chance to buy those over the weekend. They're set up actually at the moment in the back of the meeting room. Now, the other thing is that Tony's equipment, he had quite a lot. I didn't realise how much he had, so we had to squeeze them into your car, Tammy, when we went round. This is the sort of best equipment, if you like. These are the main rigs and things, and all the boxes and things you can see there. On the left-hand side, you can see an IC7000, which is one of my favourite rigs because it's all in one. It's got all the bands, 270 and everything else HF, little colour screen, lovely, lovely radio that you could fit in your car, run portable with or whatever. It's by the way, the little box underneath it is a tuner. It's the specific tuner for it. AT7000 I think is the number of the tuner by LDG. So you put those two together. I've got one mounted in my Land Rover. I've got the head mounted in the front, and I've got the tuner and the back in the back of that, and lots of people did. So there's that there. There's lots of other radios. I won't go into every one of them there, but you can see we've got an ICE92 handheld. We've got some RS92 software to use with that. We've got the ASU FT8900. There's another handy ICOM handy there, all in very good condition. A couple of VU meters there, a Watson 25 amp power supply, and on the right there, just on the right of the shot, is a couple of classic transceivers from back in the day. It's an FT290 and an FT790. They're in beautiful condition. They've got their leather case. You can see even the box of the FT790s underneath. There's a power supply for them, there's the microphones, and they are as good a condition as you're ever going to see. And we'll be selling that as a pair because I think they should go together really. And the manuals are there and everything. They're really excellent condition. So if you want a classic all mode VHF and UHF transceivers, they are brilliant, and they'll be there as well. In addition to all this stuff, and I'm still sorting it out, you see by the way some antennas underneath. 3 of those 4 antennas are brand new, sealed in their bags. There's also going to be a box to the right of this with sort of a jumble box, a rumble box, where you just go in and get lots of bits and pieces out. But this is the main equipment I building a display for that this weekend. This will be the first time that this equipment has been available for sale. What isn't sold here will probably go to Barford Radio Rally next month. Lots of talking, sorry about that, but we want to tell you. Now finally, to tell you, we don't charge, Tammy and I don't charge anything for this, and we're very happy to put the event on and pay for everything. But the one thing we do ask you to do, if you can afford it, just buy a couple of raffle tickets. Charities close to Tammy and my heart is Dementia UK and Cancer Research UK, and both our families have been affected by these diseases, and all we ask is if you could help us buy a couple of raffle tickets, because you could win one of these prizes, and there's more on the way as well. So you can see there's a lovely little Yaesu FT4X handheld. They're really nice little tough built handheld. Some Icon bits and pieces, some Airfix kits if you don't want to build it, if you don't want any more radio bits and pieces, a multimeter there. We've got a RNLI boat kit there. They come with the paints and the glues and everything as well. So there's a couple of more things to come. There's a nice Icon water bottle on the left as well, drinks bottle. So there's some of the prizes that you could win. If you're coming to the weekend, you could just buy raffle tickets. There'll be a tin there, an honesty tin, where you could just buy them. If you're not coming but you'd like to support the raffle, or you just want to make a donation that will go to those two charities, then drop me an email and we'll sort them out. Sorry about that. Lots of talking about Radioactive. That's this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. If you haven't already got the booking form and you want specific details, just drop us an email and I'll send it to you. Now, I'm going to mention one other event that's really important for us. It's just over a month away now. It's Barford Radio Rally, which is our annual radio rally. Here's some details. It's on Sunday, the 6th of July. It's open to the public between 9 and 1 o'clock. It's in the usual place, and everything is as it has been for many, many, many years. At least 20 years I've been organising it. So, it's a very traditional rally. An outside pitch will still cost you £8 this year. An indoor table, we've only got 1 or 2 left now, is £10. An outside pitch is almost unlimited size, and you can put whatever you like in that for £8. And admission for everybody is £3, or if you're 16 or under, it's absolutely free. If you want more details than that, and of course we'll be making more details available nearer the event, just drop me an email, radio@dcpmicro.com. Now we're almost getting to the point of revealing the competition. But before we do that, we've had some news from our member Jason 2E0JIV, who's asked us to publicise a really exciting event. I'm sure you've noticed that Bunkers on the Air, or BOTA, and UK BOTA is a really popular pastime. It's really given everybody something more to do at all times of year without waiting for special events and special days and things, and it's very popular. Well, it's so popular that actually there's now going to be a worldwide event, and Tammy's got a slide here which we're going to show you. It's called the Worldwide Bunkers on the Air. It's the International Bunker Festival 2025. It's the first one I believe they've ever done. It's the 14th and 15th of June, so not very far away at all. And all the details are there at www.wwbota, B-O-T-A, so www.bota.org/Bunkerfest25, or just search for Bunkerfest25. I'll tell you a little bit about it. This exciting international festival will bring together amateur radio operators from over 13 national bunkers on the air schemes for a weekend of bunker activations and radio fun as part of Worldwide Bunkers on the Air. History and amateur radio combine at the first ever Bunkerfest, a worldwide celebration of bunkers and the stories that they tell. Over 13 national bunker on the air schemes are coming together for a weekend of non-competitive portable activations and radio fun for WW-BOTA. Whether you're a seasoned operator or a first-time bunkers on the air explorer, there's going to be something for everyone. Hunters, activators and shortwave listeners alike are invited to join in the excitement. The rules are simple. All you have to do is visit that web address, www.bota.org/Bunkerfest25 for details, and get ready to experience the magic of Bunkerfest 25, an international festival of bunkers. It's only been around a few years, isn't it? Amazing.
Festival of bunkers.
Yeah, who'd have thought we'd be talking about that? But it really is a popular pastime. And if you're looking for something to, different to do and want to go out when you want to go out, there's this activity all the time. But this looks like a really, really good event in just under 2 weeks' time.
If you feel a little bit bunkers about things.
Yeah. I see what you did then. Really good. I've done enough talking for now. Let's head over to Tammy and have a look at our little people.
Here's the little people this week. Now, this one just appealed to me because it's all about power. It's an all-electric house.
Oh, I see. I love it.
I love the loo, actually.
Do you?
And the loo roll holder.
Can you hang on? They look like little Apple adapters there, little Apple power
they
adapters,
are, aren't they?
Oh, I like the toilet roll holder. That is
that's
brilliant.
really cool, isn't it?
I just love the way these guys are so ingenious. That toilet roll holder is split between the poles of a US-style power plug, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Miniature-calendar.com. They come up with a new picture every day, and Tammy picks one out for us every week. It's fantastic, that is. Love the little bottles of wine in the glasses and things.
They're not power. They're on a power table, though.
They are. I love that. That's, honestly, that's one of my favourite I've ever seen here.
It's cool, isn't it?
That is really good. Thank you very much, Tammy. So, do keep in touch with what you do. We always say this to you. I know we're getting out and about a lot more now, and summer's here, but we love to hear what you're up to. Drop us an email to the usual address, radio@dcpmicro.com. It's at the bottom of your screens now, and we look forward to hearing from you and sharing your news. Doesn't have to be about radio either. Just take a picture of something good that you like to see, that you found, and let us know. Now, 2 weeks ago we last met, and when we asked you, what on earth is this? I've seen our guest actually in another monitor here. He's having a close look at this. I wonder if he knows. Can you shake your head or nod if you know? No, he doesn't know, no. Well, this hasn't been a very easy one, I must admit. We've had 4 entries. Has anybody entered online today?
No, I don't think so.
Everybody's very quiet on BATC. Had a few hellos and things on Facebook, but I don't think anybody has said what that is.
No.
It's hello from our Scottish Special Agent 2M0 RHT. Okay, all right. No, well, let's have a look then at people who entered by email. Phil, M7NFV, says, I think the picture is part of a sextant, because I saw one similar in an auction catalogue a few weeks ago.
Andrew G0SUM, I think it may be part of a film splicer or running mechanism.
Yeah, I get that. Cine film. Well, that sort of thing. Yeah, I get that. Bob G6PWS, I believe this is the lower portion of a sextant, possibly a very old one, and we do have a nautical contender in our club, don't we?
Mike GAEY, this item is a very small part of a maritime micrometer sextant. It is the lever that disconnects the micrometer drive to allow for faster course adjustment.
Micrometer.
Okay, micrometer.
It is. It's a. Well, anyway, let's see if who was right at that. The answer is.
Well, it was a sextant.
It is, and they're well done to those people. I don't know whether they used any AI tools or anything to get it, but you can just see on the right-hand side there, just about 2/3 across, you can see the little bit that.
If it was a head, it would be the lips, wouldn't it? Was that just me?
Really?
No.
You've got a really overactive imagination tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose so. Oh, I see what you mean. Yep.
Okay.
You're just drinking squash here, aren't you?
Well, maybe. I got a bottle, so you don't know what's in it.
Okay. Anyway, thank you very much to Tony M0TDK who sent us that picture.
I think he had it. You haven't got it on your thing here, but I did look at the description earlier, and he had it about 55 years ago. He was given it. Yes,
and he has got a boat.
And he has used it.
He has been very keen. So a really good one, that one. Thank you very much. Now, we'll see. How are you at this one? It will be interesting to see what this is. I'm not allowed to give you any clues.
No, you're not allowed to give any
told
clues.
off if I do. So let's have a look and see if you know what on earth is this. We'll leave it there for a little while because there's a few things that might come to your mind that came to my mind when I first saw it.
You're not allowed to give any clues?
No, I know. Anyway, you've got just under 2 weeks to let us know. radio@dcpmicro.com. We need to know by 3 o'clock on Wednesday week. And then we'll include it in our answers. Do you know what that is, what it does, what it's called? It'll all help you with this competition.
I like Ralph has just put a comment, is if your lips are like that, you need to see a doctor.
And actually, funny enough, he is a doctor.
He is a doctor.
Are you offering, Ralph? All right. Okay, now before we meet tonight's guest, just time to tell you what's happening at the club this week. Well, Saturday and Sunday is radioactive. It goes on most of the day Saturday. If you're here really, really early Sunday, I'll make you bacon rolls as well. But they're really for the people who've stayed overnight. Radioactive finishes at 4 o'clock on Sunday. And of course, we love a bit of help packing up as well, because there's lots of things to pack up. 7 o'clock on Sunday night is GB2RS News, on repeat at GB3MB. And then on Monday night, the 7:30 Monday Night Net, also on GB3MB. And then next Wednesday, back at the school, CNS school, for a meeting between 7 and 9:30, which is a social informal, and also Bright Sparks for our younger members. We'll be showing them how to make something. And of course, as I said, please do keep in touch with us, with all your news and stories and pictures and things like that. And of course, this card, which we're always happy to send to anybody, cheer them up. Very happy to send. Don't have to be a radio amateur, don't have to be even in this country. We're happy to send. Just send their name and address to us. We'll add your name to ours and send it to them. So now on tonight's main event. We're meeting Well, already we've had quite a good chat, actually, to be honest, in our technical rehearsal, and I'm not going to spoil his talk for it, but I think you're going to love this. I really do. Don't tune away, put it like that, because tonight we're going to meet Kevin, AA3XV, or otherwise known as G4NEJ, and I think we'll know why he's got that call as soon as we hear him talk. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, how are you, David?
Hey, I'm good. You started it, and you sounded not British, but you've got quite an English accent, haven't you?
I do.
Still.
I've been here in the United States 27 years, and I preserve my British accent. It's very useful. People remember you. Go shopping, they remember you. Work meetings, they remember you. I did once was on a Zoom call, and somebody said, "Hey, I hope that British guy's not coming." And I was able to say, "Too late, I'm here."
You're right. People really do remember. I used to work in the States quite a lot, several times a year.
Yeah.
I remember doing a talk for quite a few people in an audience, and afterwards someone coming up to me, I shouldn't say this because I'm not taking them, I really aren't, but it was quite funny because they said, "Hey, I love your accent. I know Bob Smith in Scotland. Do you know him?" And it's just because, do you have that where they just think we're such a small country that we know each other?
And I say, no, not amongst the 70 million people that live there. No, I don't know.
I know, that is funny, isn't it? But it is nice. They do. Most of the US do love our accent. So anyway, Kevin, it's lovely to meet you. I'm going to let you get on with your talk and I won't interrupt at all. But as always, to everybody at home now, if you've got any questions or comments or anything to ask Kevin, and I promise you, you're in for a lovely ride of a story of his life, then please do pop them on the chats on either Facebook or BATC, and we'll read them to Kevin at the end. But now over to you, Kevin.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me, David and Tammy. So a bit of background, how did I end up presenting this today is I was at Dayton Hamvention actually a year before last, and I bumped into some people from the Your Radio Club, and they said to me, "Hey, what do you do?" You know, and so I told them what I did, and they said, "You've got to come and talk to us about what you do." So that's it. That's how I got to be here to talk to you today. So I'll give you a little bit of background of where I came from. I'm from Portsmouth in England. I grew up in Portsmouth, went to school there, and was a member of the local radio club, and I'll tell you that whole story. So what was my early introduction to amateur radio? Well, it's a classic story. I think we've heard it many, many times. It's one of building crystal sets and homebrew radios, and basically just having a lot of fun discovering how radios work, how you put them together, why they don't work, of course, is when you learn the most stuff. And I started off with the Ladybird book, Making a Transistor Radio. I mean, how many of us have got that book? That is an absolute classic book. I still have it. And from that book, you can build a crystal set, and you can build a TRF receiver. And it was written by George Dobbs, Reverend George Dobbs, who was the founder of the GQRP Club. And actually, I didn't realize he'd written that book for some time until I met him at Dayton Hamvention. 3 years running, I met him at Dayton Hamvention, and then I realized that he was the man who wrote this book. And so I actually took my copy of that book, which I got probably when I was 10 or 11 years old, and he signed that copy for me, and that's a very precious book. And actually, very recently, I've recreated that whole radio. I went and found some germanium transistors, and I rebuilt the whole radio, and sort of relived that part of my youth, and I had a lot of fun doing that. So what happened next? My dad was in the Navy in Portsmouth. He was a medical officer in the Navy. And originally, I told David this, I was born in Ipswich because my dad was in the Navy there. He moved back to Portsmouth, and we went to Navy Days together. And at Navy Days, there was Ferrum Radio Club with a radio station. And I was absolutely fascinated. I just couldn't leave that little stand they had there with all the radio equipment. They were talking to people on HF. I thought it was very exciting. They had copies of a radio license so you could see what it was about. That was really a lot of fun. So I went and joined the Ferrum Radio Club, and I used to cycle from home. I lived in Portchester at that time. We moved out of Portsmouth into Portchester. And the reason is my dad left the Navy actually and became a curate in the Church of England, and he was at Portchester Castle down the south coast at the church there. So we lived in Portchester, and I cycled down to the Ferrum Radio Club, and I met a great bunch of people at that club. Thank goodness I went to that club. They had amazing mentors. They were just a huge help to me. I mean, just outstanding. Couldn't do enough to help me build stuff, learn why things didn't work. And I'm still in contact with some of those people today. So one of the things I say to people all the time is, what did I learn from that? What were my lessons learned? My lessons learned are great mentors make great clubs and future engineers. And I think all of us as amateur radio operators have to remember that. You had great help when you got started, just pay it back, because you just help people, lift them up and give them opportunity in a future. I spent last weekend teaching a technician amateur radio course, and of the 14 people who came, we got 12 of them passed their exam. So this is what great mentors do. They go and they share the joy of amateur radio. So those mentorships by clubs, they and the national societies, they augment those STEM efforts that are going on in the community. And also, I have got involved in a local STEM school that, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But they are an aerospace STEM school, what we call a magnet school here, where kids are brought because they show an aptitude in those areas. So this has become very important to me as I've become one of the grey head members of the club. I don't know how that happened. They came around very quickly. So what else did I do? I had a BFO to an old shortwave radio, and there's a picture on the right hand side there with that old valve radio that I got. I think I got it at a jumble sale, and added a BFO on the side of it. And that's the first time I could listen to single sideband. And then I found out what Denko coils are and made a Denko coil radio for 80, and I put 60. It was 160 meters there. And I put a 2-meter converter on there as well, so I could listen to 2 meters. And I made a little FM demodulator. And I was really getting pretty adventurous by then, building a lot of stuff. I love building stuff and still do. And then I passed the Sitting Guilds RAE in 1978 and got my first license as G8RZF. And then I had a Pi Pocket. If anybody had the Pi Pocket phones, you remember those when the police sold them off? Everybody was buying them up and putting crystals in them. And actually, I still have mine. And had a 6-channel FT202, that first radio from Yaesu, the first handheld they did, which is a wonderful radio. And actually, I still have that radio too. I can't part with it. I love those old Yaesu radios. So 4 years later, I went and took the CW test, 12 words a minute at Night and Radio. It's a radio station on the Isle of Wight. And then you get to see what real CW operators are like. I was talking to one of the operators there after I went and took my test, and he was listening to CW and typing the message on the typewriter and talking to me about how the radio station worked all at the same time. So that's what a real CW operator is like. And I became G4NEJ. And I didn't put this in the notes here, but actually my brother is G4NAB. And he lives up near Newcastle, still in England. So what did I get up to next? Well, I found out about building a C-band 3.7 to 4.2 gigahertz satellite receiver. I read an article in 1978 about receiving Russian TV signals using a dish and some equipment. You couldn't buy any of this equipment. If you were going to do this, you had to build it. So I built my dish, and there it is on the right-hand side. Built a low noise amplifier for 3.7 to 4.2 gigahertz. I had no idea whether it really worked or not, except when I turned it on, the noise got louder on the TV signal and in the audio. So I figured it's generating noise, it's probably amplifying something. I built a down converter and a demodulator, and this is all built what we call here Manhattan style, but upside down chips on pieces of copper board, soldered it all together, and it worked. Later on, I did tests on the low noise amplifier. I had a noise figure of 2.1 dB, which wasn't too bad. And I could receive Russian TV live from the Horizon satellites. geostationary satellites, where they were sort of geostationary, they wobbled around a lot. I set this dish up so that when I was home in the evenings, it would actually be pointing in the right place in the sky. It was on a balcony on the back of the house. At my parents' house, and I could receive pretty good pictures, not noise-free, but pretty good pictures. And there's a couple of pictures right there, taken off the screen. Um, and the local newspaper came along and said, "Hey, can we do a feature on this dish that you built and what you're doing?" And so they came along. They did. It was actually on the front page of the Portsmouth Evening News. Um, and from that, I actually was asked about what you're going to do when you finish high school, etc. Um, and I was very, very keen to go and work on spacecraft and do RF engineering. And actually, Marconi Space in Portsmouth invited me to go along and see them, and I did go along and see them. Actually, I got my mum to drop me off, went to see them, and I was offered a job, and I ended up joining them and working on spaceflight hardware from day one, which was just shocking to me that actually two things. First of all, to be working on spaceflight hardware, and secondly, actually got paid to do it because it was so much fun. And I worked on Olympus, Skynet, and Inmarsat. They were the first three satellites I worked on. And I met a just tremendous mentor there, who was a RF engineer, head of the RF engineering department. Just incredible. He really helped lift me up in understanding how to do test and measurement, RF test and measurement. So I learned a lot. I tell you a very quick story about that. So I had one of and in those days you go into somebody's office and they're puffing on their pipe and they tell you what they're going to do. Okay, son, we're going to go and do this. And I went to the clean room with him and he said, we're going to test some step recovery diodes. And they would generate harmonics if you've ever played around with those and you pick off the harmonic. And that's how we did one of the local oscillators on one of these satellites. And he showed me how to test the step recovery diode, and he wanted me to take notes and write down the performance of each of these diodes and characterize them all. And then he reached underneath the bench and he brought out a tray and he said, "The bad news, son, is there's 200 of them." And so that's what I did for 2 weeks. But I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot of stuff. So moving on from there, I looked around in the sort of 1990s. I worked at Marconi for a long time doing lots of different space programs, but I looked around in the 1990s, and it was the early stages of satellite TV was starting. And I thought this is really exciting stuff. It'd be really interesting to be involved in it. By then, the USA was leading with TVRO, as it used to be called, with C-band dishes and decoders, and Sky TV was just coming online, becoming mainstream in KU band, and there was a squarial around, if you remember that at the beginning as well, which is a flat panel antenna, which really didn't go anywhere, and now there's a few of those around now, but it's taken a long time for those to become mainstream. But I just saw there's a lot of opportunities in this new world with satellite broadcasting and news gathering and great opportunities. So actually, I teamed up with Mike, G3JVL of the Loop Yagi flame. If you read any of those RSGB microwave books and you look at the Loop Yagi, you'll see Mike G3JVL mentioned there. He's no longer with us, sadly. I'd worked with Mike, and we designed a phased array loop Yagi for Arabsat, for a geostationary satellite that had a downlink in S-band. And we demonstrated this, and actually it was wanted for a program that was going to roll out across the Middle East, and we designed this antenna for them, and they made hundreds of these antennas, and they were rolled out as a product. And from that, I got an invite to go and visit BBC Tomorrow's World in London. And I remember going to the office there. They invited me, gave me the address. I went there and met up with Kate Bellingham, if you remember Kate, and all the team actually who were on Tomorrow's World at the time. And they said, "Hey, we want to come and do a live demonstration on Tomorrow's World on the top of Television Centre, BBC Television Centre in Shepherd's Bush." And I went along, very exciting to do. I really enjoyed it, and got a lot of publicity. So that really was a gateway for me into a lot of exciting satellite programs and opportunities. And then in 1997, just by chance, I had been working on satellite phones, actually. Satellite phone the spacecraft side and the uh, handset side, and I did a lot of the link analysis, performance link analysis for link budgets for satellite phones and how would they work, and some of the forward-looking development of how to make satellite phones operate in was a pretty challenging environment. Then it wasn't LEO, it was all GEO. So these are really challenging link budgets. So I did a lot of pioneering work in that area. And the company I was working for at that time sent me to the United States to go and work with Hughes and said to go and see Hughes. They want somebody who can look at the link budgets with them. And I spent 2 weeks working with them on link budgets. And at the end of the 2 weeks, they said to me, "Hey, would you be interested in coming and working here?" It was in Maryland, just north of Washington, D.C. Um, and I said to them, can I get an interview or something?" He said, "You've been here 2 weeks. I mean, you've done all the link budgets. You interested in coming?" So I, I just said, "Yeah, I'll call my wife and see what she said." And my wife said, "Hey, what the hell? It's this could be an exciting adventure." So we packed up, took a 16-month-old baby, uh, all our stuff, put it in a big container, and moved to Maryland. And I went to work for Hughes on what was called Spaceway. And Spaceway was a fully regenerative geostationary satellite. So it's basically a software-defined radio inside a spacecraft. Um, a huge one that could take anything on the uplink and demodulate it, switch it, and transfer it to the downlink. And so, what you can do with those types of satellites is manage a lot of the spectrum and make sure you fully occupy all the spectrum, make it very efficient. So I worked on that, and I worked on ICO, which was really strange because they sent me back to London to work with the ICO team who were in Hammersmith, and I was going backwards and forwards, working with ICO and then working on Spaceway, and then I got involved in another geostationary program called Thuraya, which was for the United Arab Emirates, and it was a satellite phone, geostationary satellite. And we did both the handset and we did the spacecraft, and I was the director of engineering for that. Incredibly fun program to work on, very interesting, trying to get quadrifilar helix antennas to work that are only 10 millimeters across. And so I worked on that, actually went out for the launch of the spacecraft and then for the first call testing. Very exciting to be there at the very beginning of that. And then I worked on DirecTV, which is like Sky Television for the US, but we were moving up to Ka band in the 2030 gigahertz band to do a high definition TV for the first time. So I worked on that spacecraft too. And again, it was director engineering. The spacecraft actually built, as was Spaceway, at the Boeing facility in Los Angeles. So I was flying back and forth to Los Angeles to the clean room there to do tests and development and just to oversee the engineering part of that program. It was a lot of fun. So I worked through all that, those different programs, and then the opportunity of a lifetime came up, which I just was shocked to have an opportunity and was very, very excited to get into. I was offered a position working on human spaceflight program with NASA with Orbital Sciences. Orbital Sciences were the contractor to NASA for the human spaceflight program. They had worked on several spacecraft programs for NASA. One of them that had recently launched when I got there was Dawn. And Dawn was an interplanetary spacecraft that had been off to explore the asteroid belts. And that was very successful. They got some amazing pictures back. So NASA came to Orbital Sciences and said, did they want to bid on a spacecraft to resupply the International Space Station after the shuttle would cease operations? And they wanted to dovetail that in as the shuttle was still flying, so that we would have some time to develop the spacecraft and get it up and running. And so I headed up the RF engineering team for Cygnus. I was a senior scientist on the program, RF senior scientist for the program, right from when we bid the program initially to NASA. And then we won the program. It was around about $400 million contract. It was a huge contract. And it was a 5-year program to initially design and development of the first spacecraft. And as I said, my role was the senior scientist. And then I obviously did a great job because they made me chief engineer for the whole program. So I took over running the whole program. and it was just a very exciting thing to be involved in. Then once the program moved to flight status, I moved into the mission control, and actually that's got to be one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, is to actually sit in mission control for a mission to space station, and get to sit with the most amazing people and work with them. And I would be on console for launch, right the way through to capture at the ISS. And then when we did separation after we'd emptied all the cargo and they'd filled it up with all the stuff that they didn't want, uh, we'd take the spacecraft and we'd fly it away from the space station. We'd deorbit it and drop it in the Pacific Ocean. And I was involved in several of those missions. So I'll tell you a little bit about, what that was like, and what I did there. This has got to be one of the most fun things I ever did. So Cygnus was a resupply space shuttle. I said when the shuttle was going to stop flying, they were trying to think the shuttle could take an enormous amount of supplies to the space station, and they were trying to figure out how else they could get stuff to the space station in that volume. They chose two contractors. One was SpaceX with Dragon capsule, and the other one was Cygnus. Um, and really, NASA was trying to see, rather than flying everything themselves on shuttle, um, could they take commercial companies, develop and fly spacecraft on behalf of NASA to the space station? Um, and so this is really somewhat of an experiment to see, could that be done? Could we partner with NASA, build the spacecraft and do all the testing, etc.? Have NASA just sit in with us and watch us and provide guidance, which they did, and they did just an amazing job. Um, and could we actually make that work and make it a commercial viable service, but also do it at a price that NASA could afford? We started in 2008, and the first flight was in 2013. Um, and there's a lot of steps go into building a spacecraft. First of all, you've got a diverse range of teams. You've got propulsion people, and you've got power people, you've got RF comm people. You've got people to do logistics. How do you put cargo in a spacecraft? How do you strap it down? How is it to unload that cargo? Which way should the hatch open? And there's a lot of mechanical engineering goes into how hatches open on spacecraft. Boy, I learned a lot of stuff about spacecraft I thought I'd never know about. Life support systems, astronaut operations, and just a lot of technical nuances into how to get a mission to fly. So the first flight we did was called Orb-D demo. Orb was for Orbital D demo mission, and named David Lowe. And David Lowe was an astronaut who was no longer with us. He'd passed away, and so it became the normal setup for every Cygnus mission that we'd name it after an astronaut who's no longer with us, or somebody who was significant in the early space program. And that's still today. That's still exactly what they do. The picture of the astronaut is in the back of the spacecraft. So when you open the hatch and you look in, the picture of that astronaut is right there facing you. So Orbital not only designed Cygnus, though, it also designed Antares, which is the launch vehicle that Cygnus would launch on. And something very unusual was that we launched from NASA's Wallop Island facility. So coming down from Washington, D.C. onto the Virginia coast, there was a space facility there already that NASA owned, used mostly for sounding rockets, but they wanted to try and use it for manned mission supply. And so we launched from Wallops Island at this new facility, built a brand new launch pad there, a lot of facilities. And actually, as you come off the highway there, if you ever do go there, then you can go and visit the place. There's a sign on the highway as you come off, and it says ISS on ramp, pointing off towards Wallops Island. So you can't miss it. So these pictures at the bottom here on the far left-hand side, this is Cygnus in the integration facility. It was all built in Virginia, up near Dulles Airport in Virginia, near the Washington, D.C. Area on the Beltway, as they call it there. This facility was right in the outskirts. Everything was built there from electronic point of view, propulsion. The top capsule you see there, which contains the cargo, that was actually built in Italy and then shipped over. And they use those large Antonov aircrafts to move this stuff around. Um, and then they would mate the two together there in Virginia. And I am going to show you some pictures, but we'd roll this over on its side and put it into a hermetically sealed container, and then we'd drive it to the launch site, ready for launch. The middle picture there is Cygnus in orbit, which is actually here, sorry, on this side. The picture behind me as well. This is Cygnus in orbit, taken by the crew from the space station. Um, and I'll tell you a little bit how we get those pictures down during the mission. And so there's the patch on the left-hand side is the D1 mission, and the Orb-1 mission was the first commercial resupply mission where Orbital was paid to provide cargo to space station. And there is a picture of Antares launching on the right-hand side of the picture there. So, what do we do in spacecraft design and development for Cygnus? The interesting thing is the engineering team was augmented by astronaut crew members, and they worked within and very, very closely with our team as we designed and tested the system, and we progressed through all the stages you need to actually get to flight. And I've put three pictures here of the three crew members I work most closely with. At the top right is Carl Waltz. Carl had been on space station for 2 visits to 6 months each and flown shuttle 4 times. The nicest guy you can imagine. I just love working with Carl. We spent a lot of time together, spent a lot of time in Japan working with Japanese space agents together. And then Dan Tenney is on the left-hand side there in the middle. Dan helped us with our mission ops. Again, did an amazing job. He was a really nice guy to work with. I was tasked once, I'll tell you this very quick story about Dan. I was tasked once with taking first-year degree students through the Mission Control Center and giving them an overview of what it was like to sit in Mission Control, and who would sit where and how it would work. And I looked through the window. I saw Dan was in the Mission Control Center. I thought it'd be great. I'd take the students and go, "Here's Dan. Dan's flown a space station. Spent 6 months on space station. He's flown on shuttle." And I went over to Dan and said, "Dan, I want to introduce you to these students. They're all here. They're in their first year of their degree." And I said to them, "I want you to meet Dan Tenney. Dan's flown on the space shuttle, and he was 6 months on the space station." And Dan said, "No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Don't keep telling people that, Kevin." And he insisted on saying that until he finally went, "No, okay, yeah, I did fly there." But I didn't know what to say to these students. He just said, "No, it's nothing to do with me." And he's not dressed like that. He's just in a t-shirt and jeans at the time. Anyway, Dan was terrible at pulling your leg and doing stuff like that. At the bottom right-hand corner, this is Frank Culberson. Frank was the most amazing guy. I worked for Frank. He was a Top Gun pilot, went from Top Gun pilot to being shuttle commander through a number of years, was commander of the space station, was the crew rotation chief. He would select which astronauts went to space station, and also he would select astronauts for Mir in the Mir days as well. Frank, the most amazing guy, fun to work with, really interesting and very down to earth. I went out and about with him many times on various meetings, etc., and also just social events, and a great guy to work with. I met Frank by accident. This is very interesting, but Carl and Frank, and this illustrates, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I'd love to meet an astronaut, it'd be really fun." I was just in the United Lounge at Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. area with my wife, and we looked across the lounge, and there's Frank Culberson sitting having a drink. And my wife said to me, "Tons of people like to meet an astronaut. There he is. He just sat right there, just having a drink in the lounge." And the same with Carl. I met Carl in the Apple store one time in a shopping center, and they just in amongst you, and you no idea. They're just really nice, down to earth people. I had a lot of fun working with them. They provided for us a first-hand experience, which was just invaluable because they had been there, they'd done that. They knew what it was like to try and open a hatch when you're weightless. they knew what it was like to undo a strap, or where handles should be to help you move, or where the venting needs to be inside to make sure that the temperature inside that module stays even. They were really good at all this stuff. And also they were very good at looking at what we call snag hazards, things you could catch yourself on as you were floating through space station. I did some work on that and snag hazards for EVA as well at one time, same sort of thing. So the design cycle for Cygnus was overseen by NASA. They provided software and hardware development insight. They would always be looking over our shoulder, provided actually great insights. And I met some just amazing people. I once went up, met the head of software engineering, where they do the EVA rehearsal in the swimming pool in Houston. I talked to him, had many meetings with him. He said, "Oh, I'll drive you back to the main Johnson Space Center." I got in his car, and there's a ham radio set in his car. And I said, "You never told me you had a ham radio, does this?" "Oh, no, I forgot to mention it," he said. So actually, I found out he was the one of the people, him and Lou McFadden were the chief people who got ham radio onto the shuttle in the first missions. And he was the guy who designed the QSL cards for those people. And I got to know him really well. He was just an amazing guy and very, very helpful to us. The other thing we worked with was safety committee. Safety committee is full of people who have been with NASA for a long time, maybe retired even, and you would go and have to present your design of your RF system or your propulsion system or your power system to a safety committee, and basically they would pick it apart for you. They would want to know, why didn't you design that like that, and what happens if that fails? Where's your backup to that failure? Are you one failure or two failures deep? And they were really, really helpful people. I really enjoyed working with them. Could be a little bit scary to go and meet with them, but I really enjoyed working with them. And I worked with a team, NASA team, to test again. Part of the Cygnus spacecraft came from Japanese Space Agency and Mitsubishi. So I went to Japan a lot with the NASA team and ran a lot of tests in Japan with the Japanese team to provide oversight with the interface between NASA and Japanese Space Agency. Which is a lot of fun because I got to know Tokyo really well in doing that. And Carl Waltz in the picture there, Carl came with me many, many times. So the other thing I did was we realized there were no commercial radio licenses for this type of mission to the ISS to apply for with the FCC, like you would use Ofcom. Same here for the FCC. We thought we could use a NASA radio license for our S-band radios, only to be told by the FCC, "Oh, no, you can't do that. They belong to NASA. You're a commercial organization." So we went to FCC and said, "Well, okay, can we apply for a license?" They went, No, we don't do that." And that sounds bizarre, but it's absolutely true. That's what they said. And I ended up heading up this team, trying to get FCC to see how to develop licenses that we could use for commercial spacecraft going to government bodies like ISS. And finally, I ended up testifying before a panel in Congress in the United States Senate, which was the most bizarre thing. I was the only person with a British accent there. And that was a little bit scary, I have to tell you. But it was very interesting. And I got to meet some of the senators. And out of that came a decision to have FCC issue licenses to commercial entities going to NASA bodies. And we actually got a license. And then I think I told somebody just the other day, the bizarre thing about that was my name was on that radio license for several years after we actually got it written. So it was an interesting time. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. So what I did then, once Cygnus was operational and was coming up on the first flights, we moved out of the testing phase and more into the flight prep phase. There's a lot of stuff has to be done in flight prep. One of the things that surprised me, but maybe it shouldn't surprise me, is we had to swab the inside of the spacecraft before launch, several days before launch, to see that there were no bacteria inside that spacecraft that could carry a cold or something to the crew. There are so many things you don't think about. There has to be a gas mix inside that spacecraft to the right pressure before you can close it. You close out the door and you pressurize it with the right gas mix. All these things that the flight prep that you just don't think about. I mean, how do you integrate horizontally a space spacecraft with a launch vehicle and then roll it out. All these things are incredibly complex. So once we got into that phase, we had to fly the mission. We had to actually have people on the consoles in mission control who knew how to fly the various pieces of hardware, knew the hardware inside out. And so actually, I was asked, would I move to mission operations with NASA and actually sit on console? And that took me about 3 milliseconds to say yes, of course. It was an amazing opportunity to do something I never dreamed that I would ever do. Having watched the Apollo 11 missions when I was, 10 years old, 10 years old, to actually go and sit in that room with those people was, I thought, the most amazing thing. And yes, I did get to meet Gene Kranz. And yes, I did get to sit at his desk in the Mission Ops Center from Apollo. We actually got to go in the Apollo. Usually, if you visit, you can go and look in the window and you can see it. But we got to sit in the desk and meet with him and talk to him. Again, a really nice guy. And when I did training, he also gave some inputs to that training as well. So what you must know, if you're going to sit on that console, like you see on TV in those pictures, what you must know is absolutely everything about your subsystem. Because I had been the principal architect of the radio comm system for Cygnus, and I'd been the principal architect of the proximity operating system, and the proximity operating system is the radio you talk to, which they refer to as the docking radio. This is the radio the spacecraft talks to, so the crew can see the spacecraft's health and status as it approaches space station. Because I headed up both of those systems, then I sat on that console in Mission Ops, in the comms console. So what you must know is not only how this thing operates, but how it fails. And so there are numerous sessions where you sit down and you go through every possible failure that could occur, what it would do, and what that malfunction would mean to the performance of your subsystem, and how you would deal with it. Every single step of what you're going to do during that mission is in a mission flight procedure. And you'll hear, if you ever listen to the NASA, or you watch NASA TV and you see them talking to the crew, they'll say, hey, let's pick it up on 3.9.2.4. And what they're doing is they're pointing to a point in the mission flight procedure for that crew to pick up whatever they were doing, if they've stopped because they had an issue, or they stopped to have lunch, or whatever it was. And so everything is documented step by step by step. There is nothing that's done ad hoc or on the fly. Everything is documented in that mission flight procedure. And that document is actually in front of you on your console. There are, if you look at the mission control, there are hardware copies of that behind each of the operators. You'll see the folders behind them, in the bookshelves behind them. Those are hard copies of those procedures, but you have digital copies of those procedures in front of you as well. So every single failure mode that you discuss with this team, and you sit down and you table what they call tabletop it. You go through every single failure mode, and the action to be taken if that failure occurs is in the mission flight malfunction procedure, but everybody calls it the MAL. So they say, well, look in the MAL for that, and you hope you never need that book, but you have it open on your desktop in front of you. I used to, when I used to come in to log in for my session, I would sit down. The first thing I'd do is I'd open all the documents related to my subsystem, not only the mission flight procedure and the malfunction procedure, but also technical documents that I might need. I'd line them all up on the bottom of my screen so they were right there if I need them. It's really important you have access to them quickly. All flight operations I was seen by the flight director in Apollo 13, they call him Flight. That person is actually sitting with oversight for everything that's going on. If you're talking to the crew that goes through the Capcom, it's usually somebody who has flown or is in the astronaut corps who talks to the crew. So you are all talking to various people in your team, and you can see the picture of me there in Mission Ops. I have my headset on. And so you are on what they call loops or audio loops, and those audio loops are different teams. So you can listen to any of those loops. In front of you is a console, and you can just see my console there in the bottom right-hand corner. There are 16 buttons on that console. You can listen to 16 different loops. Uh, I don't recommend that. I used to listen to 3, sometimes at a stretch, 4 loops. Everything has to be done on the loop because it's recorded. So you know who said what and when and what happened when they said that. Um, and you're not allowed to communicate off the loop. That's a deadly sin in mission control to talk off the loop. That's you can't chit chat to the person next to you. You're on the loop all the time. And what is it? It's 90% waiting and 10% high stress. And I had a high stress event, which I'll tell you about in a short while, on my very first mission. You don't need it, but it happened to me. So what is training for mission operations? Training is 12-week training course run by NASA that I had to go on. So the mission ops training team were active and retired um, uh, members of the team that would train new members. That's exactly how it worked. And some of the things were really interesting. The one I remember particularly was fascinating, was called normalizing the abnormal. This is trying to explain to yourself quietly that no, that's okay. Whatever it happened, no, that's okay. But actually, no, it's not okay. And it's time for you to speak up. What Gene Kranz is time, so will tell you it's time to step out of the team and just make sure that you address this issue before you step back into the team again. And so they would teach you a whole host of things about things that could go wrong and things you should do. And but normalizing the abnormal gave you specific examples where people have normalized something that was not normal. And in fact, they go into great detail on the 2 shuttle breakups. And what happened and why and what could have been done, and so it's actually very sobering. So I remember that particularly, that course. So you run the mission. Once you've got through that and you're on to console, then you're going to start rehearsal for your mission. You go through your procedure, you test against the procedure for accuracy and test your responses to that procedure to make sure you know how to do this. And what they do during the rehearsal is they'll bring you a red card, literally a red postcard, and drop it on your desk in front of you. And that red card says, by the way, 2 of your radio systems have stopped working. What are you going to do about it? And you have to respond to that failure, go through probable cause, look in the mail procedure, recommend an action, and offer that up first to the systems engineer on the loop, and he will then offer that to the flight director to decide what action you're going to take. That red carding goes all the way back to the Apollo mission days. They used a red card on the Apollo mission on console, exactly the same. This is a rehearsal expectation, but very exciting to do. And I have to tell you, when I worked in mission ops, I worked some shifts. I had to think to myself when I first got in there one night, I thought, this is unbelievable that I watched Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, and here I am, sat in this seat. And there's a little bit of you says, did they pick the right guy? Are they sure they wanted me here? But it was just an amazing thing to do. So how's that all work? Once you get into mission ops, what happens? So the spacecraft is transported to the launch site by a truck. This is the truck here that has a Cygnus spacecraft inside. It's especially temperature and humidity controlled. It actually has a big air conditioning unit attached to it. It's a special escort, and it moves overnight because it's an oversized load. The other thing I found out that I didn't know until I did this was everybody has an opportunity to sign the fairing. You see those fairings come off at the top of the rocket? Well, the bottom of that fairing is signed by everybody on the team. It's so small you can't see it when it's up on the rocket because those things are absolutely huge. And even the family, I took in my wife and my son, and we all signed the fairing on the first mission. Then launch day on console. I would come in about probably 4 hours before, just get all my documents lined up. I like to have all my documents and know exactly good to go. You could, you're off loop at that time. You could talk to the other members, just see if there's anything else you needed to get prepped for. and then you'd sit through countdown. I never got to see a launch of Antares ever because I was always on console. Um, and I would watch it launch. About 10 minutes after launch is when things really started. When the fairing came off of the around the spacecraft, you see the two halves come off and fall back. Then the spacecraft's exposed. Once the spacecraft is exposed, then the antennas on the spacecraft are then receiving signals, and we would connect with the TDRS network, NASA TDRS network spacecraft in geostationary orbit. And about 10 minutes after launch, we would be looking for uplink and downlink lock, and I would be looking at my console for AGC, automatic gain control indication, and I would actually get a green light that showed me that the radio had locked up on the uh, uplink to the spacecraft, and the downlink was actually transmitting. I'd say that's a 10% stress time because that has to work. You have to get lock. We did on one of the missions struggle to get lockup, and we just found that we were configured incorrectly. We sent a command and got it configured back. And then once that's up and running, then the mission focus is just I would keep an eye on the radio system to make sure it's operating correctly. And about between 1 and 3 days later, depending on the launch time, etc., we would arrive at space station, and then we'd get some pretty intense back and forth with start as we approach space station. 30 to 60 days, Cygnus stays at space station, then it departs at ISS, and we would take it over the Pacific Ocean. We'd do a burn earlier than that and drop it in the Pacific Ocean, and it would burn up on re-entry. And I used to watch the radio system on. We get down to as low as 90 kilometers, and the radio system was still operating, still getting telemetry, and then suddenly, boom, it would just go off. And that was the end of it. And then everybody signs the mission patch, big mission patch, as soon as that's occurred, and we know that it's in the Pacific Ocean. And then the MVP of the day puts it up on the wall, velcros it on the wall. The most valued player, that's somebody who really stepped forward for the team during that mission, gets to get up on the ladder and put it on the wall. And if you go on mission control in Houston ever, if you look on the far right-hand side, my mission patches are all on the wall there. So mission operations, what was that like? So ISS, I don't really know, but it operates to UTC, not US time at all. The crew wakes at 6 a.m. UTC to start their day. My day in mission operations ran 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. So I would work those 12 hours through the night. And that's 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time to support crew operations. And each member of that crew has their day completely planned out, and it's displayed on a screen which you can pull up on your console. You have several screens in front of you. You can pull up on your console, and you can look at what each member of the crew is doing for the day. It even has when they're having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and all the tasks for the day until bedtime. And then if you were doing something with the Cygnus arriving or something that day, then it would have all the details of that arrival for the day on there as well. So on the launch day, as I said earlier, we would arrive about 4 hours before launch. I like to get everything set up and make sure that I knew where all my documents were. Once we got on orbit, operations are orbit raising and monitoring health and status of the spacecraft. During that early session, we had to do engine burns to raise the orbit of the spacecraft. And I'm not involved in that. The guys who did that were actually sat in front of me. And they would do incredibly precise engine burns to get us in the place. Something that may interest you is that when you're going to send a command to the spacecraft, they actually put the sequence of the commands up on the screen, on the big screen, so we could all look at it, because you have an opportunity to say, no, I think that's out of sequence. And then you'd hear the person who's working comms for telemetry would actually give the command away. Shout out on the loop, and you'd know the command was away. I used to count to see how long it would take, and it would take about 30 seconds for the command away to be sent, and for me to see that the command incremented on the increment counter, because we have a counter for every command. So I was interested. It took 30 seconds from sending the command to the spacecraft echoing back that it received the command. So after launch, on the launch day, whatever time that is, could be in the middle of the day, then you move to 10 p.m., 10 a.m. shifts. And then things start to get pretty intense when you're 4 hours from final approach to the the ISS, at about 4 kilometers. And then at 4 kilometers, we had what's called a proximity radio, which locks up. And it's a short range radio between the space station and the spacecraft, and the range rate sensors become operational. You have to have 3 differential range and range rate, which is using the radio link. We use that for range and range rate, differential GPS, and we do laser range finding. You cannot approach space station unless all 3 are working, so that you are fault tolerant, too fault tolerant in this case. Then things become very focused when you get to 250 meters from space station, even more at 10 meters away. And then on Cygnus, they would reach out with the Canadarm, which is that picture you can see there, and they would take that big dome section at the back and lock it over the top of the docking ring on Cygnus to capture it. And actually, the crew called that putting the bin on the pin, which I thought was interesting. And Nicole Stott, an astronaut I worked with very, very recently, she told me, and this is just off the cuff, she told me this. She said, you know what's more scary than EVA? Trying to put the bin on the pin on a spacecraft that's floating, because it's inert at that point. So if you nudge it, it'll float away. She said, that's the scariest thing I ever did. So I thought that was very interesting. So there it is. There's the bin at the top there. And the pin is on the top of the spacecraft just here, and that's what they're going to grab. Sorry, it's at the top of the spacecraft right here at the back, and that's what they're going to grab. The signals go by, and they'll come in and grab it. The crew are using their own laser rangefinder here in the top right-hand picture. They're actually using the laser rangefinder to verify that the numbers they're getting from the differential GPS, laser rangefinder, and radio, that they corroborate with the numbers they're getting. And they're in the cupola, you can see there. And you can just see Cygnus in the background there. Now, these pictures were emailed down. So they'd be taking these pictures on digital camera, and they would email these pictures down. So you're getting these pictures coming down as this is all going on. The first time we ever docked with Cygnus, by the way, we lost the television link about 10 or 15 seconds before they actually put the bin on the pin. And we all sat there just waiting for them on the voice loop to tell us they got it. And when they announced they got it, everybody went bananas. We were told by the flight director, get back in your seats. But it was just such a relief to actually get there and get this thing captured for the very first time. So what did I do after that? After that, well, let me tell you something about mission ops as well, which really surprised me. Because you're in a heightened state of awareness when you're on mission ops for probably 2 weeks or so, you come off of that. That's a real downer. And post-mission blues is a real thing, and everybody talks about it and who's worked mission ops. Because you've been on this heightened state for quite some time, and then suddenly you come off and everything just goes back to normal, and you don't have that heightened state anymore. That was very interesting to me to feel that. So after I did that program, I actually broke out and decided to do something completely different. I actually started a small aerospace company. I thought I'd go and try and do some of these exciting things I'd seen in a different way, and try and do some payload stuff for space station. And actually that worked in tremendously well. I was very fortunate. I knew a lot of people by then. And I did a program called Maritime Awareness. It's the first thing that I did with my newly formed aerospace company, was build a payload called Maritime Awareness. Radio spectrum is the new commercial observation focus for space. Everybody's interested in multispectral observations these days, visual, multispectral, and RF spectrum. And so I did this payload on the ISS for observing 100 to 200 megahertz. I worked as chief engineer for the program. We also built the hardware. And NASA funded part of this, and it was funded by a couple of other organizations as well. And we did the whole design through ISS integration. The focus was on marine band. What were they looking at? And I worked with the University of London on this as well, was looking at emissions from fishing vessels and illegal fishing identification. And that's the reason we did this. That was the whole premise of the program. And so interestingly enough, the radios in that were 2 Flex Radio 6700s. We have 32 channels to simultaneously receive, but we could combine those Flex radios to really have a huge waterfall of 100 megahertz instantaneous bandwidth. And we could just pull down these huge waterfalls and look at those. And there's the antenna in the center there on the bottom of the space station. Peggy Whitson was the one who prepared that antenna. and put it on the outside. And she's launching on an Axiom launch. I think it's going to be tomorrow. It was meant to be today, and it's got delayed. And this is Kate Rubins here with the actual payload there. And interesting enough, in this picture, the blue box there, you can see that is the ham TV box on space station in the Columbus module, which is just about to be turned back on for ham TV downlink. And there's the on the left-hand side, you can see this is the Columbus module. This is Japanese module on the other side, Columbus module here, and the antenna is just on the bottom of here. And this is the payload here before it went to space station. And very quick story. I know I'm running a bit late here, but very quick story about that payload. Kate put that Rubens put that in the rack there. It's got handles to lock it with, so you can push it up and lock it, because it's very difficult when you're weightless to lock something into a rack. I got a call. I was actually outside doing something in my garden, and I got a call on my cell phone, and the guy said, "Oh, hey, it's a mission control here. We have a problem with that rack. We can't get any power on that rack. You know, it's any tips you can give us about getting it working?" I said, "No, it should just plug in and work when you put the power on." And I said, "Ask Kate to pull it back out and push it back in and lock it back up." And he said, "Okay, we will do. We do. I'll call you back. We'll see what happens." So 10 minutes later, the phone rang. I picked it up, thinking, "God, this is bad news." And he said, "Kate says she's really sorry. She forgot which breaker it was on the top of the panel. She switched the wrong one on. There's nothing wrong with your equipment." So this is a big relief, but that was interesting. So here's what we got for maritime awareness. This is the bottom here. I tilted it on its side so you can see it, but here's the RF signals coming down, coming up to space stations, sorry, from the marine band. This is VHF marine band, and you can see FM modulation on some of these signals. You can see here, this is FM modulation. There's AIS is over here. And this is all across the marine band, and this was taken just coming in over Chile in the off the Pacific Ocean. One thing I learned from this: if you think your RF signals don't go far into space, or you're trying to work space station or ham satellites, think again. 5 watts from a handheld; these are big signals at the ISS. So if you've never worked space station through the transponder, go and do it. Handheld works with an Arrows antenna or something. It is surprising how big signals are at the space station. So what I did on going on from there, spectrum observation became a big thing. I designed some antennas, what are called cavity back spiral antennas, for space applications. There were a class of antenna which are called frequency independent antennas, and what they wanted to do was observe wide areas of spectrum from space. And this is a commercial company called AA3XV. You can look them up on the web. So we did an antenna that covered 300 megahertz to 2.5 gigs, another one from 1 gig to 18 gigs. I actually did one up to 22 gigs as well. And it's on every single Hawkeye 360 spacecraft in their constellation. And here are pictures of them integrating it onto the launch vehicle. This is the launch vehicle attachment. Here's the antenna here. So I actually manufactured 36 of those antennas, and they're on every single spacecraft. When you see stuff about GPS denial going on in various parts of the world, it's received on this antenna. And then coming to more recent stuff, I designed the antennas that go on the IM-1 and IM-2 lunar lander. I did all the RF architecture design for the lunar lander. I did all the link budgets, link analysis for the lunar landers, and worked with people at Goonhilly and other ground stations for the downlinks. And then we designed and manufactured all the antennas for 3 missions on the landers. They transmitted pictures and data back to Earth, but it was not all smooth sailing. This one landed in February of 2024, and the other one February 2025. And if you follow space stuff, you know what happened. In both cases, the lander tipped over, but still worked. The first one, it was translating too hard when it came down, snapped off its legs, and you can see one of the legs snapped off here. The lander came down very gently in the end, but just slowly rolled onto its back, and we still got the telemetry back. And the next one, which was last February, the lander came in translating again too hard, tipped over, but the engine continued to run. So it scooted across the moon and came to rest, as you see in the picture on the right here. Nice picture of the Earth, and there's the leg sticking up. And this was transmitted back through these antennas that I designed and we manufactured. There will be an IM3 in 2026, and I'm hoping it's going to stand upright. So the last thing here I have is an ARIS contact. So I recently have gone down to working a few days a week, and I got to do some fun stuff and pull in from some of the stuff I've done in the past. So I did an ARIS contact, and if you've ever done one of these, it's a lot of fun, between the school and the ISS crew. And so it's part of the support of NASA STEM efforts. And one of the things that's interesting that, and I learned this when I was doing Cygnus, was all crew members, when they come in, they join an astronaut school class. They come into the school for training. The first thing they do is to take a ham radio exam for the technician license, and get themselves a personal call sign so they can operate the ham radio equipment on space station. And so this is part of what they have to do in order to be able to operate NA1 ISS, which is the radio. There are two radios on space station. The one there with Sunny is in the Columbus module. There's one in the Russian module as well. So I supported Orlando Amateur Radio Club. I'm a member of Orlando Amateur Radio Club for the Sally Ride Elementary School in Orlando, Florida. And they said, oh, what can we do before we have the ARIS contact? And I said, I know what to do. I'm going to call Nicole Stott, an astronaut. She lives here in Florida. Her husband, I'm friends with her husband. Her husband's actually from the Isle of Man. He worked on shuttle, and I know him from there, and I knew Nicole from other things I worked on for Cygnus. And so I called Nicole and said, hey, would you come to Sally Ride Elementary School with me? And she said, I'd love to. So she came over and we did this day with the kids. And Nicole's really, really good at this with the kids. We had a great time with them. It was about 2 weeks before the contact. And then we did an ARIS contact with Sunny Williams, the stranded astronaut that you hear about, on December the 16th in 2024, last December, and she did a great job. We managed to answer 24 questions for the kids and one from a teacher in the past, and everybody had an absolutely wonderful time. And so the bookend to that story is this weekend when I taught that ham radio class for the 14 students. Two of the students who passed their technician's license are the two teachers at the school that I took Nicole to. So we're going to set up our amateur radio station for them there so they can do their own contacts through the ISS transponder. So there you go. Questions. I had a great time. I've had a lot of fun. I've done everything I ever dreamed of doing and more. And I credit amateur radio being the foundation of that. Back to you, David.
Thank you, Kevin. Do you know what? You've just stolen my first question that I had for you, which was I'll read you exactly what I wrote in my notes. Do you credit amateur radio for getting you into that career?
Yes, I do. 100%. If I had not gone to that radio club, had I not had those amazing mentors in that radio club, and I'll mention Mick Curran, who was that radio club, particularly took me under his wing and just taught me so much stuff about RF engineering. And then going from there into the commercial world, I came with a whole boatload of information about RF, how things worked, filters and amplifiers and specifying them. All that stuff came from amateur radio. So I would have never got this start had I not gone through that early teen stage with amateur radio. There's no doubt in my mind.
It's incredible, isn't it, when you look back at your life,
Yeah.
and you look
Yes.
at little things that, well, if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't gone there on that day, if I hadn't done,
Yes.
so much, you just have no idea where you might have ended up.
You don't. I'm incredibly fortunate. I recently was talking to somebody and I said to them, if I had to write a letter to my younger self, I would just say, hey, relax, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah, that's lovely. Well, it's lovely if you can feel it. Not everybody may be able to feel like that, but it is lovely if you can say that. Kevin's been really inspirational. I'm going to remind everybody at home now, if you haven't already done so and you want to ask a question of Kevin, this is really, I'd say, almost a unique experience to do this. Then anything about the space race or anything to do with that, I guess it would be a great opportunity to ask someone who probably will know. So do it now, either on BATC or on Facebook. We've got a couple of questions already. I will kick off with those. Firstly, from Ralph 2M0RHT, says the only qualification Kevin mentions is his C&G, City and Guilds radio license. What other qualifications has Kevin gained in order to be so successful? To so successfully complete his unique professional life.
Oh, so I didn't mention that. I went to the University of Surrey and did electronic engineering, and then I did a master's degree in satellite communication engineering with Sir Martin Sweeting and Professor Barry Evans. Again, an amazing experience. I just enjoyed going there so much. It was a lot of fun, and it was just like learning about something you're really passionate about. I came out of there after doing my master's degree, particularly because there'd been a transition from my early days where most of it was analog FM transmission and the digital age had come. So when I went back to do my master's degree, I learned a whole load of stuff about digital communication techniques, coding techniques, about even voice coding, video coding. I even did a course on life support systems for astronauts, for the spacesuits and spacecraft. I came out of the University of Surrey with an amazing education. And here's the interesting thing. University of Surrey, I thought was a great place to go. I thought I was very lucky to get a place. But when I came here to the United States, that university in their mind is gold-plated. That is one of the best schools to go to if you want to be in the space program here in the US. And that was luck on my part, but they really think very highly of the University of Surrey space courses.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you mentioned Professor Sweeting. It's just amazing that you could be learning from people like that.
I bumped into him, would you believe, very recently. I went to a conference, satellite conference, and we had a barbecue evening outside, and this Martin Sweeting came and sat down at the table.
Extraordinary. And did he remember you?
No, he didn't. I recognized him straight away, and I said, I went to university. He said, oh, did you? Oh, that's wonderful. He said.
Yeah, I guess they see so many students and things go through.
Again, a great guy, and Professor Barry Evans there particularly, who was my tutor. He was really amazing. Taught me a huge amount, and I really enjoyed going there.
Yeah, inspirational people. We all need those really to kick us through in the right path of life. I've got a question now from Richard M6UES. He says, I'm very interested in satellite television and always have been. Was there myself in the early days in the mid-80s with a friend receiving pictures from Eutelsat and Intelsat on a 1.5 metre dish. They weren't much earlier than that. You were much earlier than that. How did you get on with the receiving equipment, which obviously wasn't commonly available? Get it that you had to build your own dish must have been interesting. What diameter was it?
That dish was 1.8 meters. It was made out of plywood, and the struts at the back were all wood, and I painted it all so it would last outside. And I went to Tesco's or somewhere and bought baking foil and glued it on with epoxy. That's how I got that dish working. And all the equipment I had to build, there was nothing. Luckily, I bumped into somebody who had built a demodulator, FM PLL demodulator for FM TV, and had some ideas, but was using it for ham radio. But I just converted it and used it for satellite TV. The challenge with the original satellite TV was they had what they call dispersion on the Russian signals, which was 2.5 hertz. So the signal was constantly doing this on the spectrum analyzer. So I made a spectrum analyzer out of an oscilloscope and an old TV tuner, so I could watch the downlink signal with a down converter I made, a simple rat race mixer and an oscillator. And I had no test equipment. I was just winging it all the way with this. I got it working so you could see the carrier. And then I made, with some op amps, a locked loop so I could actually lock the carrier from the PLL so that I could actually null out this 2.5 hertz dispersion. But this is, it took me several years to the point where I got stable color TV pictures. I actually had CCAM TV that I borrowed from somebody so I could see color pictures. I have a video. Can you believe this? I managed, in those days, I knew somebody had a BATC type recorder, a very early one. They lent it to me for a weekend and I videoed the whole thing. So I actually have a video of this whole thing working.
You have a record of it then, yeah.
Yeah, I have a record of it, and I put it onto DVD and made a digital copy of it, so that I've kept a record of the whole thing.
Because those days, I suppose the television then was analog.
It was all analog. It was
Yeah,
FM modulated TV with a subcarrier of 6 megahertz.
yeah.
And it had two PLLs, one PLL to get the TV picture, and a PLL on the output of that PLL before the filter to get the audio out.
It is incredible. In the studio we're in here now, everything, I think I'm looking around, everything I think is digital, except our microphones actually are analog.
Right.
We haven't gone digital on them, but everything else, all the signal paths and everything are all SDI or HDMI, and nothing analog.
Yep.
Richard comes back, actually, who asked you that question. He said he also had one of the first BSB squareals you mentioned. That's what they were called that. I must tell you a story. I advised my dad. I worked for Philips, and I think we chatted earlier, and I said my early days. And when Video 2000 came out, they invented this video cassette that you could turn over, and you could fit 8 hours on one video cassette. And I said, that's the one to go for. That'll be the system of the future. Because they'd already done the compact cassette, and they'd done the CD. Anyway, as we all know, VHS is the one that won out. But when the satellite war came, when you had Sky versus BSB, I said to him, go for the squarial. That's the system that lost that. It's technically superior, just like Betamax was really over VHS and things. And sure enough, he went that way, but it didn't win out, did it? Yeah. Anyway, but
interesting thing today, David, is that if you go and look at Starlink, and I'm talking to you through Starlink now, Starlink's internet from SpaceX, they're the only people I know using that little squarial type antenna of that sort of size.
I hadn't thought about that. Of course, they are flat, aren't they?
Yeah, because when you install the antenna, which I did here, it's all power over Ethernet. All the RF stuff's outside, and the antenna and that incredible what that thing does. I mean, compared to the old BSB stuff, it's.
I'm taking you off the talk, but then I'm not going to get an opportunity to ask somebody who knows, I suspect, many times. Can you just tell us, for those of us who remember the flat square aerials, the squarials, and then the Elon Musk's new system, the flat ones that you have for the internet, how does that work? Why? I mean, we understand, I think most of us understand the focus and why you have a dish, that it actually focuses the radio waves onto the LNB or whatever you've got in front of it. That's how they work. But I don't understand how a flat antenna works. Do you mind briefly explaining it?
I'll just briefly explain. So the flat panel has an array of antennas on it. Could be dipoles. And behind each one of those antennas is a feed network. And you can adjust, if you want to steer that antenna, if you adjust the phase and the amplitude to every single one of those elements, you can actually steer the beam in any direction. And this is how they do it on aircraft. You fly on an aircraft and you're receiving internet, or you're able to surf the web on a plane. This is exactly what they're doing. They're using this array of antenna elements. They feed them together in a network, summing them, but they're summing through a phase and amplitude network so that the beam steers in a certain direction. And it works fairly well till you get down to about 40 degrees of elevation, and then the performance of the antenna falls off quite rapidly at below 40 degrees of elevation. But that's how they work. They sum together the elements. And it's the same with the Starlink system. If you install it, it actually has an amazing app on it. It shows you all the satellites it's seeing, and it slowly, as it sees more satellites, fills in a dome showing you the coverage area that it can receive satellites over. And it even tells you if you're off-pointed by a few degrees. It's incredible what they do with that. But that is a Ka-band array, that antenna that's for Starlink. And then they do all the RF demodulation, etc., inside there, and just put it into Ethernet, and your power comes up the Ethernet, and your signal comes back. In my case, it's 250 feet away.
Excellent. Oh, I didn't know that, and I didn't know also. I've often wondered how they did internet and things on aircraft which are continuously moving. So thank you ever so much for explaining that. I hope I'm not the only one who didn't know that, but it's wonderful. By the way, Richard says, of course, he's always loved satellite television, but is now seeing it. The next thing is going to be all online through the internet, IPTV, which is a bit of a shame, really, for those of us who enjoy RF. Can I take you on to another question I've got? And we've got nobody else. Oh, by the way, Ralph 2M0RHT says, thank you for this excellent talk. A talk delivered with passion, clearly linking your heart and brain together. So that's from Ralph. Thank you very much. We're hearing that these things soon, this is an iPhone, and I'm sure they're doing it with Android phones. Some of them are going to start being able to communicate directly with satellites, using satellites, as the signals instead of traditional masts.
Yes.
Do you know how that works?
I do.
Can you let us know?
I didn't tell you in my charts, but actually, when I started the company, the aerospace company, part of the aerospace company, we designed the antennas for Link Global for their satellite direct-to-phone network. In fact, they were the first people ever to connect direct to an iPhone from LEO orbit, low Earth orbit. So how that works is they're basically, and there's another company called not Blue Origin, Blue Water is the satellite, which also does the same. What they're basically doing is putting large antenna arrays into space, and they're phased arrays again. They're multiple elements phased together, and they generate beams within the cellular band that connect directly to the phone. What they're doing is raising the signal level to a level which you can get your ordinary phone can actually receive and send signals over that. The one challenge is there's about a 30 to 40 millisecond delay when you go to low Earth orbit. So there's some modifications in the phone to deal with that delay, because normally only dealing with the delay and the distance to a cell tower. So your phone, you don't know this, but it's constantly swapping cell towers as you're moving, but also adjusting the transmit power of the phone. So when you get nearer to a cell tower, it turns it down because there are many people and you want to balance the power from everybody. So it's the same with these satellites, except now you've got a delay of about 30 to 40 milliseconds to low Earth orbit. So they have to do some modification in the phone to handle that. But basically what they're doing is giving a very big signal to connect to this phone, and then the antenna is very large, so it can receive the small signal back from your cell phone. It's just connecting that last link, which is what Thuraya did to GEO fairly successfully, but ICO tried to do, and Iridium does currently as well. So it's really just connecting that last link that we've been looking for, but it's probably been 20 plus years in coming. But that's what they're doing. They just have very large phased array antennas, multi-elements phased together in space to generate large downlink signals and large uplink signals, and some tweaks in the phone to deal with the delay.
I guess all those tweaks in the phone to get rid of that latency or to make it invisible will just be done with firmware, probably, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was going to say, what they would say in the hardware guys would say, "Oh, don't worry, it's just software."
I'd be one of those, I'm afraid. Although I'm one of these people who still thinks in terms of logic gates and op amps. That's my generation, and I employed an engineer who moved over to software. And when I used to say, "Can't we put a chip there?" and they just say, "You don't need to do that. Just write a bit of code." And that's the way it is, isn't it? It's fascinating stuff. We haven't got any other real questions for you. Richard says thanks very much again for your great answers. One other final question that can I leave you with, though, because you're clearly also you thank the hobby amateur radio for giving you this career, or at least helping you on that, giving you the lift up for this career. Have you ever thought of designing any ham radio gear?
So I've designed things that are on the peripheral to ham radio, and they're often sort of gadgety things that help. There was an article in Radcom. I did a keyboard to go in the back of the FT710 or any of those Yaesu radios, so that you can pull out those additional features that are on the accessory input on the back of that radio. And I had worked with Andrew Barron, who's written all those books, the FT710 and all those other books that RSGB or Radio Today published, the RSGB cell. He had published that keyboard in his book, and I wrote to Andrew and said, "Andrew, do you know the circuit diagram's wrong? It doesn't work." And he said, "No." And I said, "Don't worry, I'll tidy it all up for you." So I redesigned the whole thing. Then I sent it. I saw Mark actually at Dayton, I think, and I said, "Can I send the keyboard in?" So I did, and they published it in Radcom. So I've done things like that, and I have another item which I use for ARIS, which is to break out all the PTT and everything from the back of a 9700 with accessory socket. I have a breakout board with isolated audio that I designed. That's in QST magazine. I'm just waiting for the final date when it's going to be in QST magazine. And the latest project I've done is there is a little box which came out for doing satellite tracking from CSN Technologies. It's a little box which does satellite tracking and does Doppler correction for the 9700. and actually has an internal Wi-Fi facility, so you can actually run it just on an iPad. Um, and so I want to couple that with the rotor. So I've actually designed an interface board, which I was working on building today. The interface is that box with the Yaesu rotor, XY rotator, for tracking satellites. So the whole thing can actually go outdoors rather than running two 8-core cables inside, two coaxes and all the stuff, which frankly puts me off. So I've designed this box which sits out at the antenna, and you connect by Wi-Fi back up to the box outside. So you don't need all those cables. So that's something I'm working on right now. But I've done a lot of antennas as well for ham radio. I did a log periodic antenna for ham radio. I did a couple of turnstiles for circular polarization for ham radio. I got more time now. Now I don't have to work full time.
Well, in that case, we look forward to some other developments maybe.
I'm going to have some
Thank
fun.
you so much. By the way, Andy M0NKR says, it's great talk, Kevin. He looks forward to seeing you at the next date, and he saw you this year, I believe, as well.
Yes, I was just recently at Dayton. I go every single year, and I'm at Hamcation every year as well.
Yeah, so
I'm
he
on the
was
committee for Hamcation.
he was with the RSGB team, but he's a member of our club along with Chris.
Oh,
G0
so I probably met
GWV.
him.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sure you did.
Yes, I met 3 people from your club at the RSGB stand.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Kevin, honestly, it's been, I think, really inspirational. It's fascinating, and all the knowledge that you've got, and all thanks to amateur radio. So what a great advert for the hobby, and ambassador for the hobby you are as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'd love to meet up one day. Maybe I've been talking to Tammy about coming over to that Hamcation in Orlando. That sounds good. I might see you there.
Yeah, it'd be good to see.
All right, all the best. Thanks ever so much, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
There we are. What a fascinating life, honestly. And what a fascinating story, and a fascinating gentleman. We had great fun on doing about a half-hour technical rehearsal the other day, just talking about it. But anyway, so thanks very much again to Kevin for joining us. AA3XV, if you didn't get his call sign, and G4NEJ. Just a quick reminder of what's happening this week at the club before we finish. We've got Saturday and Sunday, of course, we've got Radioactive, as I mentioned. If you haven't got that form yet, drop me a quick email. I'll send it to you. But it did go out on all the newsletter emails over the last couple of weeks. I do need to know bookings tonight, please, for everything. If you want to take part in the weekend, if you just want a free meal on the Sunday, that would be great. But we just need to have numbers. Also on Sunday, the GB Tourist News at 7 o'clock on GB3MB. On Monday night at 7:30, we've got the Monday Night Net on GB3MB, and then next Wednesday we're back meeting at CNS School that's the 11th of June, between 7 and 9:30 for a social informal, and also Bright Sparks for our youngsters. Thanks again for joining us tonight. A fascinating evening. So from Tammy M0TC.
Bye-bye.
And from me, David G7URP, bye-bye, and I hope to see lots of you over the weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.